Good morning, everybody, or afternoon, wherever you may be dialing in from. But thank you very much for joining our webinar this morning around manufacturing in the government contracting space. I am Mike Aaron Hersterbaumer, one of the senior business development managers here with XTIVIA. And kind enough to join me today is Paul Skirpsky, our vice president of our GovCon365 practice. Paul, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, Mike, and I hope you are too, and you're safe. And welcome to everybody that's joining the webinar today. We're happy to have you here.
Absolutely. I'm doing well. Thanks, Paul. So, folks, appreciate you joining this morning. So like I mentioned, what we're going to be talking about today is really manufacturing, but specifically manufacturing in the government contracting space. And what we're going to do is we have a short slide deck to walk you through that just explains a little bit about XTIVIA and who we are, and also the platform we're going to be showing you today, which is Microsoft Dynamics Business Central with our GovCon365 app. And so once we get through the slide deck, which shouldn't take more than a few minutes, Paul, the rest of the time, Paul is going to be spending walking you through the system to show you some of the cool features and functionalities of the manufacturing capabilities within Dynamics. Feel free as we are going through to ask questions. We will be happy to answer those either during the presentation or at the end, but we'll make sure we get those questions answered for you. And once we are done, you all will get a copy of the recording as well as a copy of the slide deck. So don't worry about hustling and rushing to jot down notes or anything like that. You will get all this information back to you. So a little bit about who XTIVIA is. We've been around for over 30 years with over 300 people across the globe. But most of our folks, especially all of them, I should say, in our GovCon space are here in the US. We are headquartered out of Colorado Springs, but we are a very remote company these days. Our motto is we don't really care where you are, as long as you're a good person and good at your job. That's what matters, right? So I'm in the Midwest. I'm in sunny and hot St. Louis, Missouri. Paul's up in the DC area where a lot of our government contracting experts are located. So with that, like I mentioned, XTIVIA is a full service IT shop. I'm not going to really spend any time on this today because obviously your folks here today are interested more about the manufacturing piece of our ERP solution. But just note, we are a full IT shop. So if you see anything on here that interests you or you have a need around, do not hesitate to ever reach out and ask. And so with that, folks, like we mentioned, what we're going to be walking you through today is the Microsoft Dynamics Business Central ERP with our GovCon365 application. One of the things we always talk about to our customers and prospective customers is something we like to call the Microsoft Platform Advantage. One of the big benefits of going with Microsoft Dynamics is just that. You see all these logos on the screen. You're probably very familiar with a lot of them, if not most of them. But it's really one of the big benefits of going with a tool such as Microsoft Dynamics Business Central is that interconnectivity across the Microsoft suite of products. So if you are a big SharePoint shop, if you're using Dynamics for the CRM capabilities, Power BI for your reporting, I'm sure most of the people on here are using Word, Excel, Outlook, all those tools. Those tools all can be plugged right into Microsoft Dynamics Business Central, which is really one of the big benefits of going with a solution such as that. If you also look in the bottom right corner, Microsoft Dynamics BC is a very partner-centric product. So we are a partner of Dynamics. We have been for more than 20 years, as some of you know, and that's what we're talking about today is our GovCon365 app. But the thing to just kind of think about there is if there's ever like a tool or a functionality that you may not have out of the box with BC, there's likely a partner app that will help meet that need. So again, just a little bit more on us and more of our Microsoft background. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but the main thing I want to focus on here is really just the fact that over our years, we've done over 400 Microsoft Dynamics ERP implementations. And 95+% of those are for companies that are doing some level of work with the federal government. So like I mentioned before, government contracting really is our space. That is our expertise. And so we're going to be talking about a subset of that, which is the manufacturing aspect today. A quick note that many people aren't actually aware of these days, but Microsoft Dynamics BC Business Central is actually the most widely used mid-market ERP in the world today. At this point, they have over 250,000 customers worldwide and over 2.5 million users on the product. So it's something that's really interesting because if you have a background or any knowledge about where Microsoft has played in the ERP and accounting space over the years, they've had a few different products over the last couple of decades, and this shows is that they are really putting their focus around Microsoft Dynamics Business Central as the go-to solution in the small to mid-market space. With that said, one of the nice things about Business Central, as you see from the screen here, it is a full enterprise solution. You get a ton of functionality out of the box with a system like Business Central. If they don't price it out based on like the modules or anything like that, you really get it all in one full suite. Whether you're ready to use all those capabilities as a business or not, and you feel like it's something you need to grow into over time, that's one of the nice things about Business Central. You have it all there, but when you're ready to use it, then that is the time that you can plug it in. And it's a very easy to understand licensing model as well. So what you're really here for today, government contracting space. Like I mentioned, this is where we have played as an organization. This has been our bread and butter for the last 20 plus years. And it is why we developed our GovCon365 application for Microsoft Business Central. So companies in the space that we typically are working with, they are, again, doing work for the federal government. They may do commercial work too, and that's just fine. But they are either doing professional services, product sales, or again, the topic of today's discussion, contract manufacturing with the federal government. Things that we always hear are important. Compliance is always a big one in the federal contracting space, right? So whether it's DCAA compliance, ITAR, NIST compliance, CMMC level 3 compliance, Paul talked about some of those things as we go through the demo today. But also just a fully integrated solution, right? So people are so used to in the past having to work with disparate systems for different functionalities. Again, as I just showed on that slide previously, that's a big thing with Business Central is you do get all of that functionality that you might need out of the box with a solution such as that. And then a lot of standard things that really I would say is across industries too, right? But we need easier and more flexible reporting. We need to be more efficient as an organization. Those are some of those areas that we found are important and things that Business Central with our GovCon app can help with today. So what makes manufacturing in the government, federal government space unique? I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this slide. It's all pretty self-explanatory to you there, but compliance needs, contract-based level manufacturing, being able to relate it to project work, research and development. These are all important things in this space. And again, Paul will be kind of talking through and showing you some of these areas in the demonstration today. So some of the quick things to call out about our product, our GovCon365 solution that really extends the native functionality of Business Central that is important in this space. Being able to connect the manufacturing directly to projects and being able to support the various types of contracts that organizations deal with in that space. So whether it's FFP, time and materials, cost type work, the system is pre-built to handle all of that information and those different types of contracts for you. Indirect rate tracking, inventory control by project, DCAA compliance. These are all pieces of functionality that are built into our GovCon app that Paul's going to talk about today. The other thing I do want to mention over there is you do see a few other logos on the screen, and I'm going to refer back to something I mentioned earlier. Business Central is a very partner-centric product, right? So we are a partner with our GovCon365 application. There are other partners that we leverage from time to time to even extend the functionality further. For InsightWorks is a big one that we use for shop floor advanced manufacturing, QBD systems to hook up your PLM systems such as SolidWorks or Team Center, something you might be using today in the contracting space. So again, these are just some of the differentiators of our solution here. And so why do our clients choose us? So this is live feedback that we have gotten from our clients over the years. And again, it's things that I've already stated, right? So compliance, key and vital for organizations in this space. Ease of reporting, flexible reporting, instead of waiting or combining a bunch of formulas in Excel or anything like that, having the flexibility to have access to reports on the fly, be able to adjust reports on the fly is always a big one. Ease of use. one thing that we've gotten a lot of feedback from our clients about, and I think you'll see in the demo today, Business Central is a very easy to use tool. It's a very up to date, more modern looking interface than maybe some other folks in the industry. And so it's something that we get a lot of positive feedback on. And then finally, another big one is growth. And what we mean by that is this tool is a system that can grow along with you as your business grows and as your business changes, right? Whether that's organic growth through acquisition, whatever that might be, Business Central is there to grow right along with you as your business changes and as your business grows. And so now, while you're all actually here, Paul's going to take you through a quick demonstration of the Dynamics Business Central 365 solution with our GovCon365 app. And so I know we don't have a ton of time today. But what he's going to show you is some high-level functionality around the DCAA compliance level project accounting, inventory control, sales order management, production order management, and all the facets around there. And then at the end, we will save some time for questions. So don't hesitate to put your questions into the Q&A section of the meeting here. And we will make sure we save a couple minutes at the end to get those answered for you. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and flip it over to Paul now for the reason you guys are here. He'll give you the demonstration.
All right. Thanks, Mike. And welcome to everybody on the webinar. I was excited to see how many people signed up and how many people have joined. I think it goes to show that manufacturing is alive and well in the US and especially in the GovCon space. So thanks for spending a little time with us. Like Mike mentioned, I'm going to just spend a little bit of time to show you a little bit about the interface because I was just in a meeting with a prospect, and one of the things that they mentioned, I said, hey, what are the most critical things? And one of the top three was about how streamlined is the interface? How easy is it to just show the things that I need? And I'm going to start out with that because obviously it's important. Someone just said it just less than an hour ago. But I'm logged into Dynamics 365 Business Central, and each user gets assigned a profile. And that profile, whoops, wrong button. That profile defines what is visible to them on the home page. So I'm logged in as a project accountant. A little later, I'll log in as a manufacturing manager. But that's what's going to decide, what is visible to me. And then there's also what's called role-based security. So that's deciding, read, write, modify, delete, execute permissions in the system. The first thing you see is this upper section, which I call it favorites. Microsoft calls it bookmarks. But the idea is these are areas of the system I get into on a regular basis. So my contracts, subcontract agreements. For people on the call today, inventory is something important to you. So inventory items. I'm going to touch on a couple new reports that Microsoft has delivered. And I'll show you some of the capabilities that they are putting forth as it relates to Power BI. Each of these areas can be personalized. So if there's something that I don't see that I want to add, I can just go ahead and search for it and add it. So if I start typing and I'll type in the word item, right? So whether it's item charges, you can see item tracing has already been bookmarked. But if I want to, item charges is a way that I can manage some inventory costs that get applied to items. I can add that to my desktop and just make it easy for me to get back there at any point. Under the action section, things like standard reports. We've got our government contracting reports, other base reports. You can also add to this. Month-end process. So as somebody on the project accounting side, the process to allocate indirect cost, revenue recognition, manage my per diem rates, purchase card, credit card program. The activity queue, you're going to see this in every profile. The idea of an activity queue is this is just a visualization of data. So in this case, I've got 40 hours on my current timesheet. There's 3 expense reports that I need to review and process. Each one of these is a drill down into the detail that makes up that specific number. Then as I scroll down, you'll see other queues, and I can hide or show things in that regard. Microsoft has embedded Power BI inside of Dynamics, and they continue to build Power BI reports. What they're doing is they're first getting released as part of the commercial version of GovCon or Dynamics 365. And then in the future releases, we'll have it available in GCC High or Microsoft Azure Government Cloud for Business Central. And then I can define my different projects that are most important to me. And then I've got visibility of, profitability on a project, cost and variance on a project. And if I select any of these charts, these are pre-built Microsoft charts, it takes me to the specific record. In this case, this is showing me details about this project, contract value, funded value. And I'm going to talk later about how manufacturing is integrated with the project side. That's why I want to show the project side a little bit, is because oftentimes our manufacturing clients, they've got project-based manufacturing work. Whether it's still fixed unit price, but it could be cost type or T&M work. But the idea is, how do we connect manufacturing to the project side and be able to take advantage of both of them together? The other thing that you're seeing is Microsoft is embedding their AI solution throughout. Again, it goes to commercial first and then in the other areas. But the idea is the AI is a way that we can leverage information and surface it to people. So in this case, it gives me a summary of any record. So I can see quickly, contract value, funded value, costs that have been incurred. I can see open commitments. So it just scrapes data from these forms and then makes it visible to me, whether it's on the sidebar or I expanded Copilot completely, and it'll give me a breakdown of details about this project, right? It's showing me information about profitability and, what is my fee on here? So I'm getting just a high level summary, but I don't have to go across all elements of that project card. It gives it to me in one place. Other general things, Mike talked about, how it integrates with the Office suite. So one of the things you see over to the top right-hand corner is this sales agent. So I can get information via email, and this sales agent allows me to see that data, right? So whether it's somebody's been changing something or somebody put in a request, for some kind of purchase, right? So I had Mike send over some information, and in his email, it was like, okay, I want to purchase something, and I can actually open up that email to get into the detail of what Mike said, and I'm actually doing it right inside of Dynamics versus going over to Outlook to do that. So I can actually see emails that are coming from clients, but see it inside of Dynamics. So email integration, leveraging Microsoft's AI solution, which is Copilot, also integration with the Office suite. So whether it's Excel, Word, also the Power Platform. So areas of Excel integration are things like any list or ledger. I can open in Excel, I can edit in Excel, I can share it to Teams. So that edit in Excel function allows me to actually make changes in Excel and publish it back. And we've got some videos on that. You can go to our YouTube channel to learn more about it. Or if you want to see a full presentation, just put that in the chat and Mike will set up something and we can show you things in detail. But that ability to send things off to Excel. But even inside of Dynamics, they're adding more Excel-like capabilities. So whether it's, hey, I want to sort the data. What customers have we sold the most to throughout the life of the business, right? I can sort on that and you can see what customer. Or, I want to know what customer has paid us the most money, right? So I can do the same thing and see the detail behind that. And anytime you see a number with a line underneath it, means you can drill into it. So I can actually drill into the detail and see the history of what makes up one of those total amounts. I can also set filters on data. So if I want to know all of the customers that we've done more than, let's say, $50,000 in sales, I can set that filter. Now here's that list. I can save that filter so that anytime I log in, the data is updated in real time, and I'll always see, what customer in this case has done more than 50,000 in sales. So you can save those filters, reuse them at any time. Let me just go ahead and remove that filter for just 1 second here. We'll remove the filter, and now we're back to that full list. I talked about, the Copilot and also the Excel component. So with the Excel component, one of the things you can do is you can look at things in analysis mode. So in this case, I'm looking at here's all my customers, but maybe I want to group customers in a certain way. So I can decide how is it that I want to group the rows. Let me see something that might make sense here. Well, actually, let me go to the vendor side because I got vendor groupings that might make more sense. So I'm going to do the same thing. You can do it on any list or ledger view, so it's going to look the same on the vendor side. I'll just click New Analysis, and then I'm deciding how do I want to view the data. So I'm going to say I want to group it by vendor posting group. So I have my vendors, and you decide how you want to group it. But this is saying, oh, I've got foreign vendors, domestic, etc. And then I can then take that and I can decide what information do I want to summarize. So over to the right, I'm seeing a summary of the total balance by those vendor groups. And I can decide certain fields. I'm going to hide some of these fields. So we're going to hide contact, phone number, location, responsibility center. We'll leave the we'll, we'll leave the name, but I'm going to hide the number. But now you can kind of see the detail. And then when I expand one of them, it's showing me, oh, here are the vendors that fit that specific scenario. And then same concept. I can actually drill into it. And this is showing us all the payments we've made to those vendors. So it's kind of like a pivot table in Excel or inside of Business Central that I can then pivot that data. Now I'm seeing, the breakout just summarized by the different columns that I've chosen. You also can do the same thing with Microsoft AI or Copilot, right? So I can say, create a new analysis, and I'll just give it a scenario. I'll say, show me vendors that we owe more than 25K to. And we'll say generate. So now it's going to take, the information from the vendor card, whatever my request was, and here are the vendors that we owe more than 25K to. And same concept with the drill down. I can also sort these things in different ways, but I can drill down to the detail. But this is kind of how Microsoft is blurring that line to show you information. I can either send it over to Excel or adding more Excel-like features inside of Dynamics. So those are just general things. The other thing I want to mention is the Power Platform. So Power BI is a dashboard and reporting tool. I'm going to show you a little bit on that. And then also Power Automate is a workflow tool for approval. So you can approve and have workflow on any area of the system. But I'm going to go ahead and open up an inventory report. And Microsoft just released these. So they're initially releasing this stuff again I think there might be some clients on. So these are being released in the Business Central commercial instance. They'll be released later on, for on-prem or government instance. But it gives me, in this case, I'm looking at an overview of inventory. I can look at inventory broken out by item, right? And these are what they call item category codes. So I have a way that I can define my items, and you see the idea of drill through. So I can expand one of those sections. So in this case, when I look at laptops, I've got the Surface Pro. Or if I look at furniture and I expand that, it's showing me different types of furniture that we're tracking. So it kind of allows me to see critical information inside of Dynamics, but it's using Power BI as a way to surface it. And then within my filter set, so for companies that have project-based inventory, you can go in, and I'm going to show you, we've got a new methodology for how we do project-based manufacturing. And I'm going to show you some of that. But what's happening now is instead of just using location, we're now using the project dimension. So if I want to say, show me all inventory I have for project 100025, now I'm seeing the detail of what is it that I have on hand. Let me drill down to take you to the specific items. versus show it by category code. So I can drill and take you down to the detail, or I can expand. In this case, it's showing me, oh, this cable, I've got 10 of them, but they're actually in a project location. And I'm also seeing what's out there on a PO for the project. So this report here is giving me visibility of inventory that you have on hand for a project, as well as what's on a purchase order or a production order for a project, or even a sales order. So now we give greater visibility of project-based inventory, whether it's government furnished project inventory or contractor acquired project inventory. So there's new sets of inventory reports, also new sets of manufacturing reports that are available. And I'm not going to go through each of the tabs, but just providing more insight to what's going on in the business, giving it to you graphically, and whether you're viewing it inside of Dynamics or you can go right to Power BI to view the data. And this is another set of views. This is some views that XTIVIA has put together around project on the operations side. So these are operational reports for your PM. So a portfolio view showing you revenue by customer as well as revenue by project compared to what's budgeted. And then for each project, giving you a breakout of top line revenue, breakout of costs, total cost, and then what was my profit or loss for that period. Each of these has a drill through so I can see other data about that project. So whether it's AR, time detail, expense detail, etc. And then when you drill into the next level, now in this case, it's showing me the project status, which is going to show me overall funding, what's the funded backlog, what's the percent of funding used. And now instead of seeing cumulative revenue compared to budget, it's showing it trended over time. And now in the body of the project P&L, I'm seeing the next level of detail. So I'm seeing labor by labor category code, my ODCs in more detail, as well as my burdens by pool, still showing what is my total cost and then profit or loss for that period. Each of my WBS codes or tasks and subtasks is on the right. So if I pick one, it filters the other sections and shows me just detail in this case for requirements. If I want to take any of this data and either share it, pin it, be reminded, they call these tiles, each tile offers me that option, right? So I can copy this to share it. I can also add an alert. So the alert on something like funding could be, hey, when my funding becomes, instead of just changes, I'm going to say, oh, once it's greater than 70%, send me a notification. And that notification can be sent via Teams or email. I can also send it to multiple users, right? Not just a default user that I'm logged in as. I can also pin this data. So any of the reports allow me to pin it, and I could say, oh, I've got a new report, and I'll just say this is my GovCon365 dashboard. And when I go in every morning, whether it's on my mobile device or my laptop, I want to see what the funding used is on that project. I know it's going to remind me, but I want to see where we're at to date, and I can drill into it and take me to the specific detail. And then the last thing I'll just mention on this, and then I'll kind of get more into specific workflows and business cases in the system, is that you also have the ability to personalize yourself. So we have options where the end users can't personalize it. Some of our clients, they don't want the employees to change anything, but some want them to personalize. So I can come in and say things like, I want to build a report and I want to see it broken out by the name of the project. So I'll grab, see where it is, job description. And then what do I want to know about this job? So whether it's AR detail, budget detail, funding detail, or each has multiple measures underneath of it. So the job ledger detail is showing me things like backlog. So here's my backlog by project. Here's what I've billed for each project. So you just choose the measure you want to add, and when you select it, it adds it to the left-hand side. So now this is saying, here's my top line revenue across all my projects in my demo system. If I want to filter that data, I just choose my filter option and I can say, I don't want to see all projects. Just show me the ones where revenue is greater than $5,000. And we'll apply that filter. And now our report is just showing us here are projects where revenue is greater than 5K. The visualization, in this case, this is what's called a table view. I can shift it to what's called the matrix view. And now a new section is there for columns. So now I can tell the system, let's show this trended by month. So now I'm seeing revenue by project by month for all projects where we have greater than 5K in revenue. I can add other tiles to this report by just clicking into a blank space and then doing the same type of thing. Maybe I want to look at some details by customer. So we'll go ahead and choose the name of the customer. And then let's look at what the customer's backlog is. And then in this scenario, instead of it being numeric values, let's look at it as a chart. And as you hover over it, you'll see the numeric value, and you can see that it's connected to the top section. So when I pick a customer, it shows me what are the projects for that customer. And again, same concept. I can save this. I can share it. I could put it into a SharePoint online view, or as well as send it off to PowerPoint. So these are some general things that make the system more powerful and leverage the complete Microsoft stack. So now let's talk specifically about some of the concepts that manufacturers are interested in. And I'm going to start with a project to just talk about this. And I'm going to go over the project card to start with it. So the project we're going to produce against is called Cyber Threat Detection Project. I mentioned over to the right-hand side, details about the project you can drill into. I just want to show a couple. I'm going to hide my summary bar over to the right, but I can see for the project details of the tasks, the period of performance, what are the actual costs, what are the budgeted costs. I can also see what is out there that could be billed, what has been billed. On the government contracting tab, I'm seeing information about revenue recognition, billing formulas, budgeting formulas. So things that are specific to this project at the highest level, this is how it's broken out. It's also attached to a certain contract. But when you think about the hierarchy, you've got the contract vehicle, then you've got the project, then below the project, we've got the work breakdown structure, or WBS. So this is a 60-character alphanumeric field. It's going to be used for several things. So the first is tracking contract and funded value. On the labor side, when we're doing manufacturing, your employees on the shop floor can actually scan in and out of a production order, and the cost is going to flow through to a specific task on the project. Same thing with the material costs. So when you're doing project-based manufacturing, we can have costs recorded against a production order, and it flows through to the project. So the question that probably some people have is, how do we create that relationship? And I'm going to show you that in just a little bit. And it's seamless to the end user, but you're going to have all of that ability to do the cost capture, as well as if you're doing like engineer to order and you've got a cost type manufacturing project, you can use all the MRP capabilities of the system, but then have everything flow down to the project. If you have work that's manufacturing based, but there's also engineering associated with it, you can also have engineers charged to tasks. So maybe this one task is engineering labor, and I want that visible on a timesheet. And the engineers can charge to a timesheet where shop floor people maybe are charging to a work order. Membership is telling me who can charge other than the shop floor folks. They have access via the production order. And then what is the approval hierarchy? Timesheets, expense reports, and requisitions. So today's webinar is not meant to talk about the project side of the system. We've got other webinars on that, as well as on-demand content that you're welcome to take advantage of. Last thing I'll mention on the project before we kind of go through more of the material side. I mean, we talked about the WBS. You have the ability to set budgeting rates. And the last thing I'll just mention is alerts. So just like in Power BI, I can set an alert inside of Business Central and tell the system that when spent or billing compared to funding or budgeted hits a certain level, notify a PM, a task manager, or you can just hand key email addresses into here as needed. But it's kind of like additive, right? We've got the base project system. Now let's talk a little bit about inventory and manufacturing and some of the things that are available, standard out of the box here. So I talked earlier about searching for favorites, but that search concept is available throughout. So in this case, I want to search from a list and I want to look for the word drone. And here's the 3 places where it came up. And one of the items we're going to produce today is that Super 6 drone. But this is the item master is where I'm going to store everything from my top level assemblies, sub-assemblies, as well as raw materials. So this is where I'm identifying, this is my internal item number, description of that item, units of measure. So the system tracks a base unit of measure, as well as sale and purchase unit of measures, global ID number for the item if needed. We talked earlier about item categories. So these are defined by you. You can set your own item categories, and these item categories can have a hierarchy to them. So in this case, electrical components are made up of capacitors, connectors, and resistors. And then I can report and say, hey, what's my inventory value of electrical components? Or I want to look at how many capacitors I have. So that hierarchy is available throughout the reporting side of the system. On the inventory tab, I'm seeing things like what's on a sales order, what's on a project, service order, production order, etc. Each of these are drill downs. So I can drill into the detail to see, in this case, what is attached to a sales order for this item, in this case, the drone. So that drill down is available throughout. I'm going to skip over cost and posting, but the only thing I'll mention here is that whether you have standard, LIFO, FIFO, average, specific costing, all of them are available to you. On the pricing side, most of our clients don't have a defined unit price, but if you have a fixed unit price, this is my list price, and then you can have contract or client specific pricing. On the replenishment tab, this is when you think about the make or buy decision. This is my default make or buy decision. So in this case, my default is we make this, but when I run MRP, you can override the make or buy decision. So if I normally make this, but if I ever need to purchase it, we do have the ability to define, okay, if we purchase it, this would be my preferred vendor, right? So I could put one of my favorite vendors, Coolwood Technology. So if we decide we're going to buy this instead of make it, maybe a machine's down or we don't have capacity, I can identify this is my preferred vendor. And then what is their vendor number that I want to put on their PO? In addition, I can have alternate vendors. So that's my preferred vendor, which would default, but I also have alternate vendors I can buy this from, and then I can identify what their lead time calculation is. So if it was something that was purchased, I identify my preferred vendor. System will default that when we run the requisition process, and then I can have alternate vendors, or I'll call it alternate approved vendors, that we could also purchase from if that main vendor maybe doesn't have availability or the cost changes, and you've got that list of alternate approved vendors. Manufacturing policy, in this case, this is make to order, but same concept. I could have things that are make to stock. You can override this. So if typically I make it to order, but I want to make something to stock, I can do that. You can also make things based on a forecast. Then I've got my routing and my production BOM. So this is going to go into other areas of the system. In this case, if I show the routing, it's going to show me the steps to produce this item. What are they? And in this case, it's a serialized routing, which means it goes from operation 1 to 2 to 3. You could also have parallel routings if needed. The routing status, so whether it's under development, it's new, it's certified, or we don't use this routing anymore, it's closed out. You can choose that option. And then when I define the routing for this specific finished good, I'm telling the system when I make it, what are the steps it goes through? It goes from cable assembly to tested cable, overmolding, QA, and engineering. And then we can define what is the amount of time, if there is time defined for setup, run time, wait time, move time, I can define that. In this case, it's saying it takes 500 minutes per unit for the cable assembly side. So this is going to define what is that default amount of time. I can identify things like, potentially a fixed scrap quantity. We normally scrap X number of units or a percent. For our clients, normally there is no scrap. They're as effective as possible. And then I can also identify what is the projected unit cost when I produce one of these through a specific work center. And then on these, and I should have said machine center, but there's machine centers and work centers. The idea is machine centers roll up to a work center. If I open one of these machine centers up, for each machine center, you can see what is the potential throughput that's available for the period for this year, for last year. So I'm seeing that capacity for throughput, and the system is going to use this as we schedule, right? It's going to look to see, how many units we can push through, what's currently scheduled, and then it's going to back schedule, based on that demand. But that's how I can define my routing in the system. Same concept with the BOM, right? So the bill of material, it can come over from, your PLM system. Mike mentioned some options in terms of PLMs that we integrate with, but you can do your EBOM in the PLM system and then have that automatically synchronized, or you can do an upload to feed into Dynamics what is that latest BOM. And whether it's, changes to Rev, so this is on a Rev A, I can see future Revs that are planned. So if I look at, this is my Rev A, what is the effective date for this? If I had a second Rev, a Rev B, and maybe that starts July 1st. So I can have my active Rev as well as future Revs in the system. I won't go through all the details of the BOM, but I am going to show you from the item itself. One of the things that I like is the tree structure. And what the tree structure can show me is details about not only the BOM, but the routing, but see it in one place. I'm not looking up to a list. I'm seeing right from inside of Dynamics, when we make the Super 6 drone, what are the components that go into it? And then I've got a sub-assembly, in this case, the Supermax. And here are the components that go into the Supermax. And then underneath each is showing me when I make it, right? So the Supermax is another produced item. It's produced in line, but we can have a Phantom produced in line, or it's produced as its own separate production order. I think in this case, it's its own separate production order. But what you're seeing is here are the routing steps that it goes through. And then for the top level item, the Super 6, you saw that earlier, which was, to produce it, it goes from cable assembly to test, overmold, etc. And then on the right-hand side, I'm seeing the replenishment system for the item, as well as material costs. And then all the way to the right, if I had the capacity cost set up for that work center, I'd also see the capacity cost related to it. So this is one place where you can see the detail. And I was just talking with a client that's planning to upgrade to the latest version. And they were saying, geez, wouldn't it be great if you could send this off to Excel? And now, as you can see, all the lists, all the ledgers, all the reports, I can just send this off to Excel in essence by a click of a button. But that's how I'm defining the BOM. Last couple things on the item, I know, because we've got a few more things we want to cover. Reorder policy. So in this case, this is a make to order item, so reorder policy is set to order. If I have other things that are purchased and maybe I need to stock a certain level, right? Because I always want to make sure I have this component in stock, right? So I can define either a fixed reorder quantity, and you can see that based on the reorder policy I select, different fields are available. So if I check maximum quantity, now it tells me, all right, what's the maximum quantity I order up to, and what is the reorder point for this? So for each item, it can have its own reorder policy based on, how you manage inventory for that specific item. Item tracking, this is where we track serialization and lot tracking for items. So you just define the item tracking code, and that item tracking code tells the system, If it is serial tracked, when is the serial number required? Same concept for lot tracking. And then finally, if you have warranty formulas or you have materials that expire, you can identify that this has materials that expire, and then the system will use what's called FIFO, first expiring, first out. So it's going to use the expiring inventory first, so you don't end up with, obsolete inventory that should have been used. And then finally, on the warehousing side, and today we're not going through the shop floor scanning, but like Mike mentioned, one of our preferred vendors that we work with a ton in the manufacturing space is InsightWorks. They've got an amazing advanced shop floor system, so with smart scanners to scan in and out, as well as directed picking or getting notified, what's coming up on your work center for production. But on the warehousing side, you can identify from a cycle count perspective the counting period. I have mine set up the old Apex style of ABC and identify how often do I count. And the system will show me when was the last time we counted, and then what is those projected future dates for counting. You can see I've got some old data in here, so I'm a little past due in terms of counting what drones are in stock. But these are some general inventory concepts and how the inventory system is managed. Other thing to note is we talked about serialization and lot tracking. There is an item tracing component, and what this allows me to do is I can decide if I get a call and someone says, "Oh, I'm calling about serial number 10037, and we've got an issue with it, and I want to see all the history of 10037." I can hit item tracing, and it's going to show me all the history of movements. When was it received? When was it used? And I can actually go back to the source document. So in this case, I want to go back to the purchase document. And then maybe when I look at this purchase document, there was a document over here that said, oh, there was damage on this item when it came in, but we were able to repair it. So I can see those documents. This can get dropped into SharePoint and then be visible for others so they can see the detail behind it. So really a great way in terms of tracking and managing data. Actually, one last thing I want to show you about searching. I talked about searching because I really like this new feature. It's kind of what they call a global search. So I can search for reports, pages, tables, etc. But now you can actually search inside of company data. So if I type in the word drone, you can see at the bottom it says search company data. And now what it allows me to do is actually search inside of my data. So if you remembered earlier, I showed here are my 3 items that have the word drone in it, but I could also see everywhere where it's on a sales order. Oh, it's on a credit memo here, or a sales return order. Maybe I want to look at this sales credit memo. Why do we have an open credit memo for a drone? I want to actually open that up. I can click on it. It'll actually take me to that source document, in this case, the credit memo. But those are just some general concepts and capabilities. Now let's talk a little bit about the production side of it. And like I mentioned, for any clients on here, I'm going to show you one of the things that's changed, which is I think we've really done a nice job of making the process of, attaching manufacturing to a project so much easier. And also, I think it's more intuitive. So what I'm going to do is let me just go ahead and switch my profile, and I'm going to shift over to a manufacturing manager. And we're going to talk a little bit about, how we're able to attach a sales order to a project and then have that MRP demand actually also go to the project. So we're just going to go ahead and we'll connect through the new interface here. This is what the manufacturing manager interface. So you can see when I selected it. Let me just change my work date. You're seeing different activities that are visible. Same concept with Power BI is available throughout. But what we're going to do is we're going to generate a sales order to say, hey, we're selling some units of this specific drone. You can also do it from a sales quote. So if you want to start from a sales quote, you can do that. I'll go ahead and click new. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to identify, who is the customer we're buying this from. And I'm just going to choose the first customer, Datum Corporation. Once I choose the customer, it fills in the detail. If it was a new customer, when I click on this lookup, you can also add a new customer on the fly if needed. And there's going to be an approval to add that customer where maybe a salesperson can start the process, but it's got to be approved by accounting. I can have multiple contacts at the customer side. So I'm going to add Mike A, full name Mike Aaron Herschtabaumer. People always ask that question. It's the longest name I've ever seen. But now I'm identifying, okay, we're selling this item and Mike's my contact. And then I'm identifying when is the customer requesting it. So let's say the customer says they need this by 7/3. And we promise to have it to them by 7/3. And then in the body, I'm just identifying what it is I'm selling to the customer. So just like we talked about, we're going to choose that Super 6 drone. And then it gives me my default price. This is if I'm doing it based on fixed unit price. And I'm just going to say we're selling 7 of these units. So then it gives me the extended price. And then I'm just going to say what project it's for. So in the past, you had to choose the location. But now I just go in and say, oh, it's for the cyber threat detection project. And I'm identifying the material costs, where those are going. And now location is just used for location, bin, warehouse. So it's the physical place where things are. In this case, I'm servicing this customer out of a specific location. Once I complete that, the next step would be I just release it. So the step of releasing it is saying, okay, this is now available for production. So now we fast forward, and typically the production team, they're running MRP, whether it's, for some clients, it's multiple times a day. For other clients, it's not happening as often. Let me just go ahead and I'm going to remove some of the stuff from my journal and I'll rerun it and it'll pick everything back up again. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to calculate our plan. So the first thing I'm deciding is, am I running this for the scheduling side, the material side, or in this case, both? What is the planning horizon? So I'm going to plan it, in this case for July. I can use a production forecast. So if I had forecasts out there, I can do that. And then I just say, okay. And now what it's going to do is it's going to look through all of my items. So it's going to run through every item. It's looking to see, should anything be reordered, right? So I talked about on the purchase items, you can identify reorder points, multiple reorder point multiples, as well as maximum quantities. So it's looking through all that logic. And now it's going to suggest to me, what is it that we need to produce and what is it that we need to purchase? And it'll be done in just a second. We're up to 95%. And there we go. There's the final list. So this is everything that we need to actually make. And then you're seeing over to the right-hand side, when it says MPS, this is the top level production order. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at, this is the one that we did for 7 of them, and it has what they call pegging related to it. So when I look at any of the items and I say order tracking, what it's going to show me is where did the demand come from? So in this case, it came from a sales order. If I click show, it's going to actually take me back to that source document. Here's the sales order that we just created just now. If I look at one of the items that's purchased, so I'm going to go to this webcam. And if I do the same thing on the line there and I say, where did the demand come from? Well, the demand is coming from a production order, right? So this is the production order we're producing, but the ultimate demand came from the sales order. So it actually pegs it multiple levels up to where that demand came from. Once I review it and I decide everything is okay, then I go ahead and we carry out the action message. And what this is going to do is it's going to take anything that's produced and it'll turn it into a firm planned order. And anything that needs to be purchased, I can either make the POs or I can copy it to a requisition worksheet. I'll copy it to a rec worksheet, and I'm going to just show you one last thing, and I do want to leave, I know, I'm sure there's probably questions, Mike, so I'm going to go ahead and leave a couple minutes for questions, but I want to finish the process here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the requisition worksheet. There's also a subcontracting worksheet. So if you have steps that are subcontracted out, you can do the same thing with subcontractors. But now what it did is it took everything that needed to be purchased and it brought it over here. And the thing I just want to show is it identified who my preferred vendor was. If there was an alternate vendor, when I click on the three dots, it shows me here are the alternate vendors I could buy this from. And then purchasing would do their last step, which is review it. You know, maybe you negotiated a price because of, you know, for whatever reason, price break or something. You can identify any pricing change, or if I needed to adjust quantities because we wanted to bring a little more in stock, you can do that. And then same concept, carry out the action message. That creates the POs. And then once those POs are created, then we can receive against it. And Mike, I'm sorry I went up right to the last minute, but
You're
hopefully
good.
we have a couple minutes. I don't know if there are, maybe there's not questions. So
There's
if,
a couple,
okay,
so
all right.
we can just
So
start knocking them out if you want. So
sure, let's do that. Absolutely.
All right, so first one I see, we are manufacturing for the government, but we also provide engineering services on a cost reimbursable basis. Would this tool
Yep.
be able to handle both use cases?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's where when we talked about, you know, you could just use some clients are just project based. You can just use the project side of the system, and whether it's T&M, fixed price, or cost type, handles all scenarios. But also, if you have a manufacturing project that has any of those options, it'll also fit for that scenario too. As
Awesome.
well as commercial, right? I know that some companies are trying to, you know, build something for the government, but they feel like there's a commercial use. Our clients do also have, you know, commercial aspects to their business.
Great. So this one's kind of particular. We're currently
Okay.
using Infor for ERP and MRP.
Okay.
If we were to go to your system, would we be able to migrate our data, and have you done any similar projects for other organizations?
Yeah. So we've actually migrated clients off of Infor in the past, as well as, you know, several other MRP systems. And then sometimes we're migrating them off of systems that don't necessarily have manufacturing capabilities. So some of our industry competitors, you know, materials and inventory is weak and they use third-party products. But we have migrated companies off of Infor. How we do it though is that we use Excel as an intermediate step. So once you get the data into Excel, then we can actually take that data, transform it, and publish it to Dynamics. So migrated companies from many different systems, including Infor, though.
Cool. So real quick, the last one I see on here. So we're in the market for a new system, but compliance is vitally important to us. We need ITAR, CMMC level 2, and DCAA compliance. Does your system have the capabilities to support all three?
Yeah. So absolutely. The thing is that depending on, you know, the level of compliance determines where we need your system to live, right? So some clients are on the Azure Commercial Cloud, and it gives them the level of compliance they need. DCA is you know, DCA is not system doesn't make it DCA compliant, right? It's the controls that are in place, making sure you follow the process. We do things that make compliance easier, I'll say, you know, automate things that might be manual if you're using other systems. But depending on the level, like if you need ITAR compliance, whether you're on-prem or, you know, typically we're putting companies like that into GCC High because they need to make sure that they control CUI as well as export control requirements. So, you know, if you've got specific questions, I guess Mike just pulled up a slide that, you know, you can grab our email address, reach out to us, and we're happy to help in any way.
Awesome. Well, that's what I see, Paul. So great job. We really appreciate everybody's time this morning or afternoon. And like Paul said, if you have additional questions, if you want some more information, if you want more of a one-on-one deep dive presentation, we'd love to make that happen. So feel free to reach out to Paul or myself. And for all of us on the XTIVIA side, we just really appreciate your time this morning. So thank you for joining.
Yeah, and have a great Memorial Day weekend, and thanks to those who served. So.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.